And today we are
The
talking
Lillian
to
McDermott Show.
Connie Byrd,
We love
attorney at law. We're going to be talking about financial
bridges
issues
we
during divorce.
burn.
So
We
fasten your seatbelts. We're going to learn and grow together.
live
I'm
and
Aunt Connie.
learn when life gets tough and it seems like your best ain't good enough. If you're in need of hope, you know where I'll be. I'll be right here, right here. And when you need a friend, you can count on me. I'll be right here, waiting for you.
This is the place you can always turn to when you need a friend. The Lillian McDermott Show. To reach out to Lillian, visit her on the web at whenyouneedafriend.com. Now let's all learn together. Here's Lillian McDermott.
Hello, my listening friend. It's so nice we can meet each other on the air on this beautiful, best day ever. And for those of you who are tuning in today and you are driving around or you're listening at your home or your computers, you know, it is no accident that you're listening to the show today, because it is my commitment to provide alternative ways to heal. And it is my mission to make awareness, responsibility, and truth a part of our everyday life. And I hope you, my listening and my viewing friends, will feel empowered to live the life of your dreams and learn a new truth. Now, because you're listening today, maybe there's something, you know, something that you're going to be picking up to help somebody or to help yourself. Today is the third Saturday of the month. And as always, if it's the third Saturday of the month, we're going to be focusing on the law with Lily's Legal Dream Team. These are people that are attorneys that were hand-selected by me. These are attorneys that I myself would go to if I needed representation or advice. And today we're going to be focusing on family law. As you know, we rotate the different specialties. Today we're talking about family law. And if you or someone you know is contemplating separation or divorce, and you're concerned about finances, child support, alimony, will you be okay financially? All these questions sometimes keep us trapped and worried and not doing what we feel our body is calling us to do. And I know that I can say this, and Connie will say this as well, attorney Connie Byrd, that, you know, first is most important to work things out and try to remain together. But when there is no hope, no chances, then we have got to be responsible. The first thing we need to do is find that representation that will create a win-win for your relationship, especially when there are kids. So today, attorney Connie Byrd, part of my Lily's Legal Dream Team of Byrd Byrd Attorneys at Law, is back to discuss these questions and concern. And if you have any questions as well, you can feel free to call 407-373-5959. Call or text me, leave a message. And if we don't answer the question today, we will answer the question to you later on by responding to you. So, since it is our sole purpose in life to give and receive love and knowledge, I am grateful that attorney Connie Byrd of Byrd Byrd Attorneys at Law is right here to do just that. Welcome, Connie, to the Lillian McDermott Radio Show.
Good morning, Lily. It's great to be with you this morning.
It's nice that you're here. And so share a little bit about your background and what led you to the specialty family law.
Sure, Lily. Well, of course, I am an attorney. I haven't always been one. I started out doing some other things, working in business early in my career, and it became really clear to me that families were struggling and that divorce was creating some serious financial hardships on the way people moved forward and the way their children were affected. And excuse me. And if you even look statistically, there are statistics that show that there's just a disruption of the ability to provide for families and children. Women divorcing later are financially less likely to enjoy their retirement in a way that they might have had they stayed married. Children, the probabilities of completing college sometimes are affected by divorce. So those were things that concerned me. And so I made a career shift in the kind of in mid-career for me, and chose family law specifically for the purpose of focusing on helping people find better solutions to move forward to more positive outcomes and happier and more complete lives.
Wonderful. And for those of you, my listening friends, I just wanted to give you the number for Connie if you have any questions, if you want to call her directly, or, and of course, you've heard Terry Byrd, who's her husband, Byrd and Byrd Attorneys at Law, workers' comp issues, or family law, and that's 904-731-0990. That's 904-731-0990. And you can find Connie in Jacksonville, in our own backyard. And for those of you who are not in Jacksonville, now, Connie, do you ever help people that are outside the area, maybe as a coach or anything to that effect, to help people transition or to make some of the choices that'll set them up for a successful divorce, if you can say that?
We do, Lily. An attorney in Florida is licensed to practice anywhere in the state of Florida. Now, I keep my practice confined to the Northeast Florida primarily, which would be Nassau, Clay, Duval, and St. Johns counties. But I work with a lot of statewide groups and like-minded attorneys who are trying to find ways to solve problems rather than fan the litigation fire. And so from time to time, I will hear from people who need help outside the area, and I'm able to help them help them get to someone if I can't help them directly.
You're absolutely awesome. And we're going to continue our conversation with Connie Byrd of Byrd Byrd Attorneys at Law when we return worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com. If you have any questions, call 407-373-5959. We'll be right here waiting for you.
I'll be right here waiting for you.
I'm so excited. Here we go.
When you need a friend, you can count on me. I'll be right here waiting for you.
You can text Lillian McDermott or leave her a voicemail at 407-373-5959. Once again, here's Lillian.
Welcome back to the Lillian McDermott Radio Show, where we always learn and grow with one another. Today's teacher is attorney Connie Byrd of Byrd Byrd Attorneys at Law. Now, for those of you who are in relationship, whether you're married or you're not married, but you're in a committed relationship, perhaps maybe you share children, and you're looking at separation or divorce. This isn't a really good topic for most people because we want to avoid these uncomfortable conversations. But divorce is good people at their worst. Why not create a plan if this is the direction that you're going to go in, that you'll hire an attorney that will help you create a balanced view of what needs to happen next. So attorney Connie Byrd was hand-selected. I went through many attorneys before she was selected, and because it had to be an attorney that was child-centered, that believed in win-win, that was going to act to protect everybody. And so Connie Byrd has those qualities, and she's also someone that you want on your side. 904-731-0990 is the number where you can call if you want to get a hold of Connie. But if you have any questions today that you want to ask, you can call 407-373-5959. If we don't get to it on the recording or today, we can get back to you later on. Okay, so Connie, as I said, divorce is good people at its worst. So let's talk about this money issues, because money, half is half, and a lot of people feel that pain. So let's talk about the attitudes, the emotions going in whenever you're talking about money when it comes to separation or divorce?
Well, Lily, I think that divorce is it can be very scary for a family. And, it really doesn't matter whether the family has a lot of income or not so much income. People think, well, if we just had a lot of money, this would be so much easier. And that may be true in some ways, but regardless of whether you feel you have everything you need together as a couple, or whether you are already struggling financially as a couple, when you take a household and divide it by 2, and now you have 2 households to support,
Yep.
it costs more money.
Yep.
And that's a really scary thing for people. Most people are struggling a little bit to do the things that they think are important for their families and their children already. And then when we add that extra expense of the second household, that becomes even more difficult. So when people contact me and they've reached that point where they just feel there's no putting this family back together in the same household, the thing that I hear most is, how will we ever do this? How will we pay 2 rents or 2 mortgages? And with our incomes, maybe one person makes significantly more than the other, and so the one who's making less money, will I have to live on what I make, or am I going to get some help with this? How does this work? And those are complex questions, and they're unique to the circumstances of each different family. I think it's important to say at this point that, what we're doing today is hoping that we can give people some information and some hope. But this is not legal advice. Legal advice would require that you sit down with someone who can hear your specific circumstances and the facts about your family, and give you very specific answers to your questions. So what we're hoping to do today is to give you some information and help you think about what those questions might be that you want to ask. So I just want to caution that any statement that I say out of context might not make any sense to your family. So I'd just like to keep that in mind as we go forward.
I'm glad that you mentioned that, because even when I have medical advice on the show, that is, again, we need to be responsible and do our due diligence. But having your opinion is very valuable to us. It might help us dig a little deeper or find something else or a different route, or maybe even just come and sit with you. Now, do you charge a fee if somebody has questions, to sit down whether or not they want to work with you with their difficult moment in their life?
I do. I charge a consultation fee. Some family attorneys don't. So I think it's important when you contact an attorney, you ask them that question and you ask them what you get for what you pay. There should be value for that. When I meet with someone, they fill out some information for me that kind of gives me some ideas about what we're talking about, how many children, what kind of income, what kind of assets we're dealing with. And then we spend about an hour or a little bit more talking about first of all, the law, so that they understand the basics of the law. And then also I provide them with some of the standard forms and things that every divorce requires us to fill out, so that they can take that away with them and start gathering the information. And then answer their questions. And hopefully, when they walk away, they feel that consultation fee was well spent.
Good.
So again, but every attorney doesn't. That's just something you need to make sure you understand before you schedule to speak with an attorney. I
think that's really great advice. So as we move forward, let's say there's no way, maybe there's abuse. I'm going to take in a situation where there's abuse and the individual does not want to change and they continue to be abusive. And now the person that's going to come see you is saying there is no hope. We can't put Humpty Dumpty together again. So what is the first thing that I'm going to be concerned about? It would probably be money. How am I going to take care of my children? How am I going to take care of myself? How do you determine that, Connie, where money is going to be coming from to support, and how do we get the other person to pay?
Well, first of all, it is true that when people come in to speak to me and they've been in an abusive relationship, their concern is, how can I afford to leave in many cases? And I would just ask people to switch that first question. And we talk first about how can you be safe? Because money is very important, and sometimes you need money to be safe. But creating a safety plan around how you're going to leave and when you're going to leave and where you're going to go, it may be the most important thing if someone's dealing with an abusive relationship. So we start with that and talk through what are your options, what is available to you, what funds are available, who are the people in your life who may be able to help you. If we don't have other options, and sometimes even when you do, we like to put people in touch with Hubbard House or Betty Griffith House and St. Augustine, some of the other places where they can get some help and some assistance if the situation warrants that. So we're also always trying to weigh, and I don't want to minimize abuse or violence at any level. It's never acceptable at any level, but it is important to distinguish whether we're talking about a few situations where someone lost their temper, or whether we're talking about a situation that is truly abusive, it has been in the past, or has the potential of becoming abusive in the circumstances. The most dangerous time that people are subject to violence, intimate partner violence, is the early stages of separation. So even if a person has shown anger before but has not actually expressed that as physical abuse and violence, we need to make sure that that's not where we're headed. At the same time, we don't want to overreact to that and see what isn't there. People will be angry during the divorce process. There are many cycles of emotions, and anger is certainly one of them. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to separate and do a little screening and get an understanding of how that plays into what we're doing, create a safety plan, and then switch to the question, now that we have some context, of financially, how do you do this?
Okay, so for those of you who are just tuning in, don't you just love Connie Byrd? She is a wonderful attorney. And I mean, when she speaks, I hear music, because, you want to hear someone who's calm. You want to hear someone who, when you are going through the worst moment in your life, you want someone that's going to be bring common sense to an unsensible, or I don't even know if unsensible situation. I'm just making up words now. But 904-731-0990, it's a difficult time in our life. And there's so many, it's so nice to have someone to turn to that you can trust, that will give me the best advice that I could possibly need at the moment. So now that we've discovered what the finances are, many people, especially women, depending on who's the power, the one who brings the money in, some people just take a back seat to the money. What if they don't know where the money is? How do you discover that, Connie?
Well, and we're going to jump a little forward in the process now, but every divorce includes by law a discovery process where it's mandatory, it's required by law, where you exchange documents with your partner and give you the opportunity to evaluate and see what information is there. There are other tools available too, like subpoenas and things like that, to go find out what people's wages are, how much money is in the bank, how much money is in the retirement accounts, how much is owed on the house. So if one person doesn't know that, there's a process to get you that there. Unfortunately, that process takes some time. It can take, 30, 60, 90 days or longer, depending on how your divorce is progressing. So there is something available called temporary support that you can look to, and sometimes that's the right route to go. If two people are divorcing and they agree they're divorcing and they agree that they're going to find a way to work together during that divorce period, you don't need to go that route. They can reach an agreement to either stay in the house together and be civil, or to one of them leave the house for a time until they can come to a final solution. If they're not able to agree, then the court has a place for you to go where you present the information that you have about what your need is. And if you file a motion for temporary needs, when you file your original petition for divorce, or when you get served with that petition, then the court will grant you an expedited hearing and make a ruling about how assets will be made, or income or assets will be made available to the person who doesn't necessarily have access to the income, the family income and the family funds. So it's important to know that that's available to you. In most of my cases, people resolve that themselves. They come to an agreement about what they're going to do while they're in this process. But if you can't reach an agreement, then the judge will help you with that.
Yeah, yeah. And many people don't know, it's like, and you can fantasize about divorce, but when you see that half is half and you split everything in half, is that the rule in Florida? How do you come up with the calculation of how much is the amount that it will be paid?
Well, half is half has to do with what you own and what you owe, but it doesn't have to do with child support and alimony. So there's not an automatic rule that is as to alimony and child support. Child support is based on a chart and a calculation. Alimony is based on a demonstrated need of one party and the ability of the other to supply that need. So we need to separate in our thought assets and dividing assets from dividing and sharing income in divorce.
Very good. Very good. There's so much to consider when you're going through this difficult time. Again, divorce is good people at their worst. And usually money gets us, the arguments about money gets us into the trouble where we feel that there are irreconcilable differences. And here we are. Now we got to split the money, and it could be even worse. And so today we are talking to Connie Byrd, attorney Connie Byrd, of Byrd Byrd Attorney at Law. And if you are interested in learning more and sitting with Connie to learn about your situation, then you can call 904-731-0990. And if you have a question that for today that you would like to ask, just send me a text or call me and leave a message at 407-373-5959. And we're going to continue our conversation with attorney Connie Byrd when we return worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com. We'll be right here waiting for you.
I'll be right here waiting for you.
And here we go.
When you need a friend, you can count on me. I'll be right here waiting for you.
You can text Lillian McDermott or leave her a voicemail at 407-373-5959. Once again, here's Lillian.
Welcome back to the Lillian McDermott Radio Show, where you can hear us worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com. I am your host, Lillian McDermott, and it is my goal that we learn from each other. Everyone you meet, go through life with childlike wonder, with curiosity, as opposed to criticism. So be curious and learn everything you possibly can about the person in front of you so that we can grow together and understand. Today, we're talking about a somewhat difficult topic when it comes to money. Many of us want to hold on to it for as long as we can. However, sometimes when you go through times in your life where maybe your marriage or your relationship is not working, and it splits. There's something that happens. No longer Humpty Dumpty cannot be put together again, and neither can your marriage. And so who do you go to? Where do you go to? And I created Lily's Legal Dream Team, and you can hear Connie and all the legal dream teamers on Saturdays as well. Third Saturday of the month. You can also hear them when we have able to get them on the show at any time. We're happy to get Connie on the air. And so today I want to encourage you to go to whenyouneedafriend.com, because there are other shows that Connie and all the dream teamers, Lily's Legal Dream Team, have shared. So if you are in need for that, there's a place where you can go to research as well. And so I want to encourage you to go to whenyouneedafriend.com. Remember when I asked you to go there and check out my sponsors. Connie is one of those sponsors that believes in the show, and I've asked you every day to go and check out their my sponsors so that you can support them the way they are supporting the show. I am so glad and so grateful that we have people that we can turn to when we need a friend, when I need a friend. And so go to whenyouneedafriend.com, become a subscriber. This is where we take 100% responsibility for our life, which means that it leads us to empowerment and freedom. So go to whenyounneedafriend.com, click on the different buttons, my social media, like me there, YouTube, subscribe there, subscribe with the site as well, and let's grow together. So today we are talking to attorney Connie Byrd about a difficult topic, which is money, the money aspect of divorce, the financial issues that we face during divorce. And who else to help us figure these things out is attorney Connie Byrd of Byrd Byrd Attorneys at Law. You can find them at 904-731-0990. That's 731-0990, area code 904. Okay, so today we're talking about the financial aspect of support, money, and money issues during divorce. So, Connie, before we went on the break, we talked about, how do you figure out, how do you get someone to, how do you calculate child support? How do you figure out if one person pays or the other one pays? How does that all play into, how does that work out?
Well, there are three really financial components of divorce. One of those is child support, and that only applies if there are children involved, obviously, in the marriage. If that's the case, then you'll be turning to charts that are divided by the Florida legislature to help us determine the amount of child support that will be required. So that's, I don't think we have time today to go through all the calculations.
Sure. And that's when they come and see you.
That's right.
That's when they come and call you and come see you. Good.
Right. But I would just say that child support is presumed that both parents have have an obligation to support the needs of their children. And there are charts and calculations that take into account each parent's income and the total income of the family and a few other factors. And then this determination is made as to how the child support gets paid and how much. So, and again, it's a kind of a long and involved topic. So I just want to say that that's one component and kind of leave that there. The second component is alimony. And alimony is appropriate where, under certain circumstances, one person in the marriage has needs that they're unable to meet from their own income, and the other person has the ability to meet those needs. And how much and how long is going to depend on how long you've been married, what the reasons are that a person is unable to meet their own needs, how long it might take them to become independent outside of the marriage, their age, because if we're getting divorced older, then we have less time to become able to meet our own needs. There are many, many factors, but there are no charts on alimony. So unlike child support, it's very case specific, but the statute guides us in some general directions, again, based on the length of the marriage and the reasons for the need and the ability of both parties. And then the third component is the division of the assets. And again, that there's a presumption that assets acquired during the marriage are owned equally, 50% by each party, but there are all kinds of reasons that might not be the case in your marriage. So those are all the things that is what gets resolved during the process of your divorce. If you're able to resolve it yourself, you come up with your own agreement, assuming that it meets the needs and is considered in the best interest of the children, then a judge will sign off on the order that you devised. If you're unable to resolve it yourself, then a judge will resolve that for you through a trial. So there are other alternative dispute methods that are available to help you work those things out. Mediation is required in most cases in Florida before you go to trial. And in most cases, and there are a few exceptions, a judge will order you there if you're not able to resolve it on your own. There's also collaborative, which is another process where we work with neutrals to help you try to work through those issues and craft your own solution. But ultimately, the law provides for a trial and for a judge to decide for you if you're unable to decide. So three main components: child support, alimony, and the division of the assets, and then many, many, many factors that go into how you come to the final number on those factors.
You know, it's interesting. That's great explanation, Connie. Many people don't take into consideration debt. As you know, finances are high up there in causing relationships to dissolve. And so if a situation where they have assets, but they have a lot of debt, who takes over that when the individuals can't, maybe one person created all the debt, but the other person now has to pay for it? How do you work with each other to solve that issue?
Well, Lily, the thing about marriage is that it's a legal contract. So when people enter into a marriage, they've agreed to work together. And if that debt was acquired during the course of the marriage, regardless of the fact that one person incurred it, it's considered marital debt, unless the person who incurred the debt was doing something, the legal term is dissipation of assets, but unless someone has been doing something without the knowledge and consent of the other person. And the best example I can give you is gambling. If someone has incurred a lot of debt from gambling and the other person didn't participate, then you may have that share of the debt assigned to the other person.
Okay.
People come all the time with the question of, what about the student loans? They're his or her student loans, right? I don't have to pay those. Well, if those loans were incurred during your marriage, then the idea is the two of you made a decision that someone would go back to school. So those are marital debts, and you'll have to work that out, or again, a judge will help you decide that or give you the answer to that as to how to divide them. But they are marital debt, even though one person seems to have incurred it or gotten the benefit from it, because it was a marital decision.
Very good. And so if in a situation where it goes to trial and the judge decides, do they have parameters, or is the judge flexible? Does he have the flexibility to decide outside the parameters that normally two people would work with? Can they go beyond that?
Well, the judge's decisions are based on statute and law, and then case law, which interprets the statutes. So they're not shooting from the hip, but that being said, the judge has some discretion because they're the one who's there. They're the fact finder. So they're listening to the facts of a case, and they have some discretion to make some decisions, but only to as far as the law supports. So again, they can decide that something is a dissipation of assets based on the facts, and therefore they're going to charge one person with more of that debt than the other. But they can't just arbitrarily decide that you were not a nice person, and therefore they're going to charge you with more of the debt. Be beyond the scope.
There we go. We see this all the time. So on television, it's not real. Okay. So what if the people are not married? Maybe they've been married. They have joint children. They have joint assets, but they are not married. They have not entered into a contract, but maybe they're married 15 years.
Right.
I mean, together 15 years, but not married.
Okay. Maybe shall we come back to that after the break?
I think so. I was not anticipating that coming on so soon, but that's my issues here. But I'm just enjoying hearing and learning about this and growing with you, Connie. And I hope you, my listening friend, feel the same way. If you're interested in speaking with Connie directly, the number is 904-731-0990, or you can call or text here, 407-373-5959. And we're going to continue our conversation with Connie Byrd, attorney Connie Byrd of Byrd Byrd Attorneys at Law, when we return worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com. We'll be right here waiting for you.
I'll be right here waiting for you.
And here we go. We're going to continue to learn and grow together.
When you need a friend, you can count on me. I'll be right here waiting for you.
You can text Lillian McDermott or leave her a voicemail at 407-373-5959. Once again, here's Lillian.
Welcome back to the Lillian McDermott Radio Show, where we always learn and grow with one another. Today's teacher is attorney Connie Byrd of Byrd Byrd Attorneys at Law. You can find them at in Jacksonville. It is a wonderful office that you can go to. Why don't you share the location? It's at Emerson, right?
Yes, we're located at near the intersection of Hendricks Avenue and Emerson on the south side of Jacksonville, very convenient to I-95 at 1646 Emerson Street. Again, that's 1646 Emerson Street on the south side.
That's right. And the number is 904-731-0990. For those of you who are contemplating divorce, separation, it is not an easy time in your life. And if you need someone to turn to when you need legal advice, Lily's Legal Dream Team, Connie Byrd is part of Lily's Legal Dream Team, where we talk about a specialty. There's different specialties. We have workers' comp with Terry Byrd. We have defense attorney Kate Messick, and legal PI, personal injury, with Heath Brockwell. So today we're talking about family law with Connie Byrd. If you need someone to go to, that you have questions and you're concerned, she is the person I would go to. Hopefully you will never need her, but when you do, it's nice to know, Connie, that you are there waiting for us to help. And so the question I asked before we went on the break was, what if the person is not married? Up to now, we've talked about entering into an agreement. And it kind of struck me. There are people who live together, who are committed with one another. They have children, they share assets, but they're not legally married. How does that work? Does it work any different than what you've shared before?
From a financial standpoint, it does work quite differently, actually. And this is a rapidly changing area of the law. There have been many changes over the last several years, even more, really, to recognize the realities that there are many committed relationships where people have chosen not to enter into a legal marriage. And I think the first thing that I would say is that, and I don't think I've mentioned this, that family law is state to state. So the things that I'm saying apply to the state of Florida. And so if you're in another state, first of all, the laws may be different. Okay. But in the state of Florida, if a couple are not married and they have children together, then there is something that you can do, which is basically a determination of, and you're separating. You can make a determination of paternity and relief related to that. And the relief will come similar to a parenting plan of what you would see in a divorce. So the court will adjudicate, if you don't reach your own agreement, how you spend time with the children after you've separated that relationship, and child support, and who will pay and how it will be paid, and will kind of take jurisdiction of the children. Of that relationship. Mm-hmm. Best interest is always the standard for children, and even though you may not be legally married, that same standard is going to apply. Unfortunately, for other than child support, for the financial aspects, you're now involved in something other than divorce law. So it would be, for instance, if you own a home together, it would be as if any two people owned a home together, and that home would be, so let's just say, Lily, that you and I went and bought a home together. And now we aren't going to live in that home together anymore. We want to do something separate about that. So what would happen under the law is one of us would go down and file some type of a petition to divide that asset and to separate that asset. And the court would then make a decision about how to separate it. So if we had bank accounts and those accounts were shared and they were owned by us jointly, and we wanted to separate them and we couldn't decide how to do it, then the courts would adjudicate that, but not through family law. They would do it through some other methodology.
Interesting. Very interesting. Okay. So as far as being married or not being married, it's important to have an attorney to represent, correct?
It is. It is, and many family law attorneys can help you with those issues. I would send those things to a different type of civil litigator generally, because I focus on these things within the context of family law, because they're going to be governed by different types of statutes and laws.
Okay, and so you've made me aware in the past that there are other ways, different ways, if people can't afford a divorce, because sometimes that makes it even worse. You're in a difficult situation, and now you're trying to make some decisions. Are there any services that will help people that can't afford an attorney?
Yeah, that's a really important question, because divorce can be expensive, and there's really there are not a lot of things we can do to have it take fewer steps. Sometimes the parties can make it less expensive if they're able to work things out themselves.
Sure.
But if you're unable to, there are certain steps that have to be taken, and it just becomes very expensive. If you're there's two things to think about in terms of affording divorce. One is whether one party has access to the funds, and therefore I don't today have the money to do this. And then the other is where the family truly doesn't have the money to pay for the divorce. So in the first case, I might want to file for divorce, but I don't have access to the family finances. Mm-hmm. And so I need to do something to be able to get this ball rolling without, and eventually I may have access to the money. So in that case, a judge can award or can determine how the attorney's fees and costs will be split. That's usually done at the end of the divorce. In some cases, they'll allow a budget for that as part of temporary needs or some other type of motion for fees early in the case, so that it would be kind of fair. But in the case where the family just really can't afford it, okay, then there are unfortunately not a whole lot of things available to them in terms of how to get an attorney. Most of the legal aid agencies reserve their legal aid attorneys for things where people can't really file on their own. And you can file as what's called a pro se litigant in family law. So that means you can represent yourself in family law. There's something called family court services available. It's in every courthouse in the state of Florida, where you can contact them and they will provide you with basic forms that have been approved by the Supreme Court. And those forms and they will provide someone who will help you get the right packet of forms and tell you how to get it properly filed. They will not give you legal advice. So you're kind of on your own with that if you go through, if you decide not to have representation. Just one last thing I'd like to say about the fees, though, is, there's a difference in I have no access to money, and I don't want to spend this money, and I don't say that lightly, and I'm very sensitive to people's needs. But if we need a new car in order to get to work, we find out how to afford the best car we can afford. Sure. And that may include borrowing money to get that car, or it may mean that I don't get quite all the features on the car I want. If our kids need to go to college, sometimes we have to incur debt for our kids to go to college. So there's people need to give some thought to this being one of the biggest decisions that you're making and the way it's going to affect the rest of your life. And again, I'm not encouraging people to incur debt and do things that they are uncomfortable with, but weigh that decision about how much I can afford to pay for my divorce in the right context, and in context with other decisions that you're making that are important about your future.
Well, before we go, because I know we're getting into this is the fastest hour on radio, I think. We hear this a lot. We entered an agreement, we agreed to a price, and now this person is angry. I'm not going to pay. I'm going to play games with money. In a situation like that, can we? Oh gosh, let's continue that conversation off the air. Okay. So for those of you who are tuning in, you can go to YouTube to listen to the rest of the show. Connie, I am so grateful to you for always being supportive of the show, a friend of the show, and thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
And for those of you, if you need a family law attorney, Connie Byrd of Byrd Byrd Attorneys at Law. The number is 904-731-0990, right there in Jacksonville, waiting for you. This is Lillian McDermott wishing you love, peace, joy, and unexpected abundance. Make it the best day ever. Okay, so let's continue this conversation. Now the show is done. Let's continue this conversation, Connie, you and I. The question that I want is that when somebody is playing games with the other person, they're continuing the abuse. And the way they continue to control and manipulate is by withholding money, even though it was agreed upon and it's been established. At that point, I hear the person that is needing the money say, you know, if I put them in jail, then they can't work. And if they can't work, then I go get paid. It's a vicious circle. So if that happen, what are the recourses that we have to protect ourselves?
So I think what you're talking about is after an order has been put in place that's ordered someone to pay alimony or support or some other monetary compensation.
Yeah, or we have agreed together that this is how we're going to split our assets, and this is at the beginning where everybody's very nice, and then all of a sudden there's the everything hits the fan.
Right. So the answer is different depending on which of those places you're in.
Okay.
If you're at the place where there's been an order, whether it be the temporary or the final order, and someone's refusing to comply with the order, then you do have available to you enforcement action. And you're right, sometimes you have to make some decisions about that. You know, if I put them in jail, how can they work? And if they can't work, how will they ever pay me? So, you know, it can be a little bit of a difficult decision. But ultimately, a court has ordered someone to do something because the court has determined that they have the ability to do it. And if someone feels that they just truly don't have the ability to make the payments the court has ordered them to make, then they have access to the courts to go and get that modified or reduced, or at least to get enforcement on it suspended until the time comes when they can. So for instance, if someone has been working and they're injured on the job and now they're unable to make their child support payments, you know, they're not typically going to go to jail because they're not paying because they're not working. But that doesn't automatically relieve them of the obligation to one day pay. So the amount that they owe continues to accumulate, and when they go to work, then money can be automatically taken from their pay. Partial part of it being the current amount, and part of it towards what they accumulated while they weren't working. Mm-hmm. But of course, in order to do that, they have to be working, and there has to be a place for you to go get the money.
Oh, it's so difficult, isn't it?
It is difficult. There is no easy answer to the person who is just simply decided that they are not going to pay. Mm-hmm. So I have had cases before where we went back on motions for contempt and enforcement multiple times, had purge amount sets, which is an amount that a person has to pay based on what they currently have available, and they will pay the purge amount in order to stay out of jail and then immediately not paying again. And there's not a really good answer to that, other than you do have the courts available to you, and there's no limit to the number of times you can go back to try to enforce that. Now that's different than the agreement that you made that's not an order. You can't enforce what's not been ordered. Mm-hmm. So if you've reached an agreement and someone's refusing to comply with the agreement, you need to go get an order, and that might be a temporary order. Or, you know, if you're not ready for a final order, because there's no way to enforce an agreement that hasn't been through the courts. You can't enforce an agreement through the courts.
Yeah. Now, great. This is great information to have. It's empowering information so that we know what our legal rights are, and be able to enforce. You had mentioned earlier, and that many of the laws have changed in Florida, especially in the last few years. Are there any, like, for example, if somebody's paying child support, what are the tax ramifications for that? Can you claim your children? Do you not claim your children? So how does that work in the state of Florida?
Well, in Florida, well, first of all, who claims the children is based on the Internal Revenue Code. So the Internal Revenue Code has a list of requirements that you go through as to determine when people are divorced, who's the head of household, and it's based on who's provided a certain level of support for the children. And that is typically the person who gets to claim the dependent. However, there's a form that you can sign where you transfer your dependent to someone else to claim. And you can do that as part of the divorce process and file it with the Internal Revenue Service if the two of you have agreed for one reason or another that someone else is going to get to claim the dependent than the one who, if you went strictly by the IRS's code, do it. I think it's also important to note here that the new tax law that has just gone into effect is going to have some effects that we don't really all understand yet. It's very new. But the one thing that we do know is that in the state of Florida, in the past, under the Internal Revenue Code, unless you agreed otherwise, a person paying alimony was able to deduct that from their income for income tax purposes. And the person receiving alimony claimed it as income. And that was done primarily so the family would have more income to split, because the person paying is paying usually at a higher tax bracket. And so if they could deduct it, that was less of the money went to taxes. And so under the new tax code, beginning with divorces that the final order is entered after December 31st, 2018, that will no longer be the case. So alimony will no longer be deductible to the payor after December 31st, 2018 for orders signed. Now, if your order was signed before and you've all been deducting it for the last, however many years, you continue to do that. So this is new orders signed after December 31st, 2018.
Good to know.
So there'll be some other changes too. It's all kind of being sorted out right now, but it is important to know that state law and federal law changes all the time. And so what you may have heard from someone about what's true about the law in the past, you need to find out what the current status is. Don't rely on somebody's divorce 4 years ago to guide you in how you want to negotiate. If you're doing this without a lawyer on how you want to negotiate your divorce.
So much to consider. Now, this is another concern that I've heard many, many times, which is, child support, clothing. I've heard many people say, well, I give her child support. I'm not going to pay for piano lessons, or I'm giving her child support or him child support, because it goes both ways. It could be the female that makes the most money and is paying child support for the male. So I don't want to be stereotypical here, because there are cases for everything. In a situation like that, is that something that the parent gets to decide if this is included? I give you child support. I'm not going to pay for their college, or I'm not going to pay for their higher education or private education. Is that something that is part of that child support?
So the child support, they can, if it's in the order, it's enforceable. Okay, so for instance, most orders have a provision for child support payments. They have a provision for health care and then the uncovered medical and health care needs of the children. And then there's a provision for extracurricular activities. And those agreements typically say for uncovered necessary medical, prescriptions, dental, vision, and so forth, that the parents will split it on some basis, 50-50, 60-40, their income, some basis. And for extracurriculars, that if the parents agree to the activity, then they'll split it on some basis, and that's in the order. So the problem becomes, if I like piano lessons and my spouse doesn't like piano lessons for our children, then I can enroll them in piano lessons, but I can't force them to pay for it.
Got it.
So if it's not in the order, and people can get that in an order. So for instance, you said private school tuition as an example. If the children have always attended private schools, and that's been part of the lifestyle, and it appears that it's financially feasible going forward, either you can agree or a judge can order that will continue. But it has to be something that can be done. So we can want our children to go to private schools, but if the family doesn't have the resources, or we've never done it in the past, it's not likely to get an order that says we will do it in the future.
Got it.
And then also probably good to note that anything to do with a child over the age of 18, unless they're finishing up that last little bit of high school after their 18th birthday, the court can't order anything for that child unless the child has certain disabilities, and their provisions have been made because of the child's disability.
Wow. Well, Connie, I'm so glad that you're part of Lily's legal dream team. You're so calming, and in a situation such as divorce, there's a lot of emotions running, and I can just feel that calm. It's like I can work with anything or everything, and so I'm so grateful that you are a part of Lily's legal dream team, because collaborative divorce is the best way to love your children, especially when you're going through these difficult times. So one last word of advice with someone that's confused, they don't know where to go to. How can you help them differently than any other attorney, Connie, in the Jacksonville area?
Well, I'd like to think that that what I bring to the table is an intention to resolve things. Mm-hmm. So when people come to me with a sincere desire to find a solution, then I think that's really where I'm able to help most. When everyone comes into this with different emotions, and those emotions change minute to minute and day to day throughout the course of the process. But if we're stuck in anger and revenge, we're not going to move forward. And I frankly am not going to be able to help you. I'm going to be able to help you, I think, through the emotion of that, if you're willing to try to work through it and let it go. Again, not taking on the role of that psychologist, but just saying that I can recognize the difference between someone who's having a moment and someone who is cycling all day long in an unhealthy place.
Yeah.
So I think my strength is problem solving. And when we're problem solving, we do have the ability to reach outside the law and look for solutions that maybe do things the law doesn't allow us to do. Of course, it takes two people who want to participate in that process. But if that's what people want to do, if they want to find a creative solution that meets the needs of their families within the context of what's available to them, then I think that's really what I can offer people.
I tell you what, you are the best. I am so grateful, Connie, for your time and taking the time to share this information that we are deprived of, because all we hear is, get him and get her, or, don't give her what she wants, or don't give him what he wants. Win-win is always the best way. We can be part of the problem, or we can be part of the solution. And I'm glad that you are out there helping people be part of the solution. And for those of you who'd like to reach out to Connie, Connie is at 1646 Emerson Street in Jacksonville, Florida. And you can find Connie at lawbyrd.com. That's lawbyrd.com. Like all the words I want to coming out of my mouth at the same time. And the number is 904-731-0990. Connie, thank you so much for your time today. I am so grateful to you. And to you, my viewing friends, I'm so glad that you stayed till the end, and I look forward to our next conversation.